In this how-to video, we are going to set up and go over the rules for TripLock by Chip Theory Games. It is designed for 1 to 2 players with an average playtime of 10 to 15 minutes, ages 12 plus. However, I have played this on multiple occasions with my 6-year-old son and have found that to be not a problem. In fact, this is one of my favorite family games, being that the main gaming mechanism is a memory mechanism. So it is a good, fun way to build that skill. Let's go ahead and set it up. First thing you're going to have is the rule book. The rules are pretty simple, basic, but it is good to go ahead and keep this within arm's reach just in case you do need to reference it during play. For play, there are 2 main game styles. Your first is a scenario-driven solo mode. The second is head-to-head. For that scenario solo mode, it comes with the first scenario, which is the station. 3 additional scenarios can be purchased from Chip Theory Games. However, they can also be downloaded in a print and play fashion. Let's go ahead and set this off to the side. Next, you have your 6 character storyboards. The storyboards here are not used for actual gameplay, but they do give you a lot of great narrative on the backstory for these 6 characters. For solo, you're going to want to head and select the character you want to be. For head-to-head, this is not a requirement. However, it does add a lot of complexity and diversity to the game because each character has their own special skill. So that is especially makes that complexity increased because you have to figure out how are you going to combat your opponent's special skill and how are you going to take full advantage of your skill that they do not have. So we're going to go ahead and pick our character, read our card, get into the game, and then go ahead and set these off to the side. Next, we're going to go ahead and grab the playmat and set it out. There we go. The playmat mainly consists of our 4 locks, which our mechanism stacks are going to sit on. The first 3 are called your visible locks, with your 4th being the hidden. You want to make sure for solo mode you have the hidden lock being on the far right side. When it comes to head-to-head, the orientation of the mat does not matter because depending on where you are sitting, the side left or right will change your perspective on where that hidden lock will change. But again, here during solo or for solo, you want to make sure it's on the right. Next thing you want to go ahead and do is grab the 4 room cards that come with the base game and pick which room you want to play when playing solo. These slightly change the goals and the room and the rules for the game. But additionally, this allows you to pick your level of difficulty because each room has a challenge mode. Again, this adds to that replayability of the game because once you have played through the rooms a couple times, you can then go ahead and try to challenge yourself and start again under the challenge mode. So we'll go ahead and set room 1 off to the side and put the rest away. Next, you have the 6 character cards. You're going to want to go ahead and pick the card for the character that you have chosen. You're going to want to set your character to the right of the player mat, and your opponent will do the same. We can go ahead and set the rest off to the side. Next, we're going to go ahead and pull out the 2 point round cards. Points is on one side, rounds is on the other. You're going to want to go ahead and set the points with the 0 next to the key for your character. This is going to be used to mark your point value during the game. So as you are earning points, you'll be moving the card up to mark where you sit point value. So to start, you will set at 0. The rounds is used for solo. Some rooms you have to do complete within a certain round limit. To do that, you will just set that off to the side. Use the unused opponent skill bead because you only have the one skill. So in solo, you'll have that extra opponent skill bead, and you will use that to mark what round you are on. Here, for our simulated head-to-head setup, we will go ahead and set it at points next to our opponent's character key. Next, you're going to have the first cheat sheet card within the game. You're going to go ahead and set this off to the side. You really probably won't need to use this once you've got a couple games under your belt. However, it is good to keep, at close grasp, because these two diagram mechanisms are not in the deck as often, so they might not come up as frequently. So it's rule changes and nuances might you might need a reminder on it. So it is good that they have provided this card. So it's good to keep at close grasp. Next, you have your action and mechanism card. Again, this is one of the double-sided where you have mechanisms on one side, actions on the other. For solo, go ahead and keep both within view so you can reference them. But on head-to-head, each you and your opponent will want to have the mechanisms up. Very useful during the game, mainly because it shows you what is on each side of the mechanisms chip. So if you peek and you see, say it's the code, then you know the key is on the other side. So if that key is what you're actually looking for, you'll know that, hey, the chip I want is there. I just got to figure out a way to flip it. We'll get more into that during the rules, but that's why this is a very useful card. So again, we would normally give that to our opponent, but we will go ahead and keep this on our side, actions up, to help go over the rules later. Next, you have your diagrams deck. Go ahead and shuffle this up and put it within reach of both you and your opponent. If you're playing solo, I usually just keep it to the left of the play mat. But again, here in this head-to-head setup, we will keep it here, again, within reach of both you and that opponent. Next, you're going to want to go ahead and each draw a diagram card. The diagram cards are not always in use for solo, but it is in most instances. You are going to want to go ahead and grab that card because it is a good habit to get into, because most of the time they are in use. Once you've drawn your diagram card, you're going to want to pick which sequence you want to go for. There are 4 on each card. We'll go over the differences between these again in the rules, but you will want to pick which one you want to go for. Once you've decided, I want this one, you will set it up on your game pad with your chosen diagram facing up. Both you and your opponent will do that. Next, we're going to go ahead and create those mechanisms, which is what the diagrams are using. You're going to want to pull out your 4 mechanism chips and your 8 failsafe chips. Come here, guys. The failsafe consists of 2 different failsafes, your explosion and your gear lock. So you just want to make sure that those are face down on the table and shuffle these up as best as you can. Next, grab your 4 mechanism chips, again, which correlate to that mechanism card. You're going to want to, usually under the table, so it is hidden and you can't see what you're doing, or even in a large bag, as long as it's big enough for you to really fit your hand in and manipulate. But you want to shuffle these guys up, changing both their order and orientation, so that way you don't know which chip or which side is there. Once you're ready, go ahead and randomly grab one of the fail safes, again under the table so you don't see what you're doing. And you're going to want to put that fail safe on the top of the mechanism so that the fail safe icon is hidden on top of that mechanism, like so. Next, you're going to want to randomly grab another fail safe chip and set it so it is under the mechanism. Again, so the fail safe here is faced up towards the mechanism chip, again hiding it from view. Then just take that stack and set it in your first lock. Continue this process until you have created all 4 mechanisms. We will just quickly simulate that here. Next, you're going to go ahead and grab the dice used in the game. The game comes with 3. The 6-sided die is used in solo mode. So here for head-to-head, we can just set that aside because we will not need it. Your 2 main dice are your 2 action dice. Go ahead and put those within reach of yourself. I also use these as an end of turn marker. So once my turn is complete, I will then take the die and put them over to my opponent's side, signaling to them that it is now their turn to go. Finally, you're going to want to grab those 2 skill beads and give one to you and to your opponent. Again, if you do not have an opponent, if you're playing solo, you will have this 1 extra bead, which would again be used to mark the round that you're on, assuming that that is needed for that solo scenario. In the meantime, we'll go ahead and set that so our opponent can use it. Once this is all completed, we have set up TripLock, considering both solo and head-to-head options, and we are now good to go to talk about the rules and how to actually play the game. Within the game, you have 3 different turn options. The first being a roll. It is also significant to know that these 3 main turn options that you can do can be played in any order. Some only once, some multiple times. But the first one we'll talk about is the roll action, where you take your 2 action tips or dice, roll them, and see what you got and go with what they have. Once you've rolled, you have 2 different options here. You can either perform both actions that you have rolled, or you can say, I don't want to do either of these, and trade in both die to be able to pick any action that you want. So here it's a kind of a little trade-off where in one instance, when you roll them, you have a random 2 actions, but you do get to do 2 things on your turn. However, you can trade this in and be able to do only 1 action, but it is the exact 1 action that you want. So again, depending on your situation, how your game's going, will help you really depend on what you actually want to do. So let's go ahead and go over those 6 different action types and the 6 different actions that you can do. Talk about them a little bit. The first one is your peek at 2 mechanisms and failsafes. That is where literally you go and you pick 2 of the mechanism stacks, and you're going to want to cup your hand around it so only you can see what's there, hiding that from view from your opponent. And you're going to want to look and be able to see what both the failsafe here on the top is and what that mechanism is. This is going to tell you, of course, what that full mechanism is, because you can go ahead and look here at your mechanism cheat sheet card and know that, hey, this is the push, so I know that the pull is on the other side. It also then shows you which failsafe this is, but you are not allowed to look to see what failsafe that is. You're only looking at this top one. And again, you get to do that to 2 of the stacks. The next is the flip. Again, this is so, hey, I've just now peeked at this. And you, of course, during game, you only get to peek that once, but you've peeked at it, you've seen that this is the push. And now you know, well, hey, I actually wanted the pull for my particular diagram. Well, I've rolled the flip, and this is what now allows you to take this stack and literally flip it over, like so. Next is the swap. This allows you to swap any 2 failsafe stacks here that are within this visible play area. So literally you take this and you want to move it around like that, swapping 2 stacks. Next is the disarm and draw new diagram. This is our first example of a die that has 2 steps that go along with it. When a step has multiple parts like this, what you're going to want to do is you have to do them both if available. What that means is, let's say, like here for the disarm, what that means is you literally take the failsafe and move it here to your failsafe stack. Well, if, say, all 3 of those stacks are already visible, you can't of course disarm, so therefore you skip that step within this action. However, if you can, you must. The next is to draw a new diagram. So we will do that. Let's make some room. And we'll go ahead and draw. Again, when you draw it, you're going to want to look to see what your different options are. Pick which sequence you want and set it again so that sequence is pointing forward. Within the game, you can have up to 3 diagrams on the ready. If for whatever reason you're caused to draw a 4th, you will then decide which of these 4 diagrams you want and discard the extra, keeping 3 on hand at any one given time. Next is your peek, flip, and rotate. This one is unique in the fact that it is for the hidden lock only. Again, like the other ones, you're going to want to peek, only looking at that top mechanism and that top failsafe. Flip it, and then rotate. Now, the rotate is a very interesting game mechanism, being that the rules claim that when you rotate to the right, like such. However, in every playthrough that I've seen, including the one by the manufacturer, when they rotate, they have rotated to the left, like such. Oop. Like such. For me, when I play, I'm going to go ahead and go with how the rules are laid out and rotate to the right. I feel it was done in that reason because by default we read left to right. So by making you rotate everything to the right in this direction rather than here, it again is just changing your ease state of mind, making it a little more difficult to try to remember what is under each stack. Again, being that memory aspect is one of that key gaming mechanisms within the game here. All right, our final rule action is the reveal, conceal, alter. This is the only action that is the or, where you're going to do one of those 3, not all of them. You choose which one you want to do. The reveal, again, is usually done against your opponent, where it allows you to take their diagram and you flip it, revealing what they are going for. The conceal is the exact opposite, usually done by the person who has one revealed, where they will then flip it back over so it is no longer visible. Finally, we have the alter diagram. This can be done against, again, like all the others, can be done against you or your opponent. What that is you literally take their diagram and you alter which sequence is the one that the person is going for. Strategically, this has 2 advantages. One, it changes what your opponent is going for, which can completely alter what they've been having to try to remember and what they are going for. Additionally, you could use it for yourself if, say, you were going for this one, but things have happened. You've decided, hey, this is now too difficult. I want to go for the easier one. So I want to alter it, flipping it this way and moving it here so I have maybe an easier sequence to go for. So that is your rule action. Your next action type is the determining or trying to solve the diagram. Within the diagram card, within your main cards, there are 3 different types. You have the trip, you have the combo, and you have the collect. Let's go ahead and talk about these. The trip is where you are trying to figure out, it's within the visible section of the locks, these mechanisms. When it has this over under arrows, that means they can be in any order. Otherwise, for like this to the combo, they have to be in this order from left to right. But here, they can be in any order. You're just trying to get these 3 mechanisms. Like I was starting to say here with the combo, its difference is that it's going to tell you, say, left to right. Again, that is left to right from your perspective of the map. So from here, left to right, but again, from your opponent, it's going to they're going to be going that direction. If they're only showing 2 of the mechanisms instead of 3, that means they can be any. That means there can be one, say, in the middle here, but it still has to be left to right, meaning that the push can be here, and then your gear can be either here or here. You just have to know which one it is when you call it out and you're saying, hey, I'm going to try to solve this. Here's my push, here's my gear, or here's my push, here's where I think my gear is. Finally, we have our collect. This is used as you have within the card disarmed failsafes and move that failsafe from there over to your failsafe stack. You will then say, hey, I'm going for a gear lock and an explosion. Well, currently I only have 2 explosions, but if, say, this one was the gear lock, you could then move those over into the use pile and mark that one as completed. Once you've actually completed a diagram, you immediately collect its rewards. Some have a point value, but then some also have an additional, worded extra reward. Again, where available, you must do all of this at the point that you've completed the diagram. So again, you wouldn't be like, all right, I'm going to draw my 2 points. Now I'm going to do my next one action. Then I'm going to draw my diagram. No, you have to do, once you've completed, you have to do everything. Again, for marking your points completed, again, for this example, say we just completed this combo, we would move that to number 2, draw a new diagram, pick which one of these. For this point, it'd be done. So we'd have the 3rd slot, and there we'd have that 3rd diagram. When completing regular diagrams, you're going to want to set those to a completed stack for yourself. This is useful for end of game completion, and we'll talk about that again towards the end on how to win the game. The next 2 types of diagrams are slightly different. You have a countermeasure type and you have a trap. These are slightly different in however they do take up a diagram slot. However, your countermeasure, the difference here is it is played face up, and its trigger can happen at any point. So even during your opponent's turn, if this happens, it triggers and you go with what its reward. Additionally, it is always up. So even once this one has been accomplished, you leave it there, maybe allowing you to do this multiple times. The trap is played face down like normal diagrams. However, like the countermeasure, as soon as it happens, it's triggered. Again, which means it could happen on your opponent's turn. It can happen at any point. You will then immediately get its reward. But unlike your normal diagram, you don't put it within your completed pile. You set it off to the discard. So those are your diagrams and how they work. The final type of action that you can perform is your skill bead. Your skill bead, you have 4 different options. You can go for points, What that means is you would start your skill bead. You would say, I'm going to use my first skill on my point. You're going to set it on your point. You're going to slowly move it up to 3. It's going to take you 3 skills to do. Once you hit that third one, you will immediately earn 2 points, moving your point stack up to the 4. If you decide to use it for an action, again, you will put it here on the action side. On your second turn that you do it, you will move it to the action. Again, immediately now you must perform that action. What that is you get 1 extra action roll. Again, you have to do these as separate things. So you can't say, for example, roll your 2 action die, decide, hey, I want this one. I'm going to save him. Now I'm going to move my skill bead up to the action, have the new one roll him. Now I don't want either of these and trade those in for any single action. You can't actually combine them like that. So you must first do this one, resolve that roll. Then you'd want to do your skill extra action, roll that, and resolve it. Your next skill type is the reset. For this one, you would set it to the reset icon, but you also have to use and discard one of your fail safes. When you do this, your opponent then will also take their skill bead and set it to their reset. This is useful in the fact that, let's say they were going for points, they had it there on the second location. On their next round, they would have moved it up to getting 2 points. Well, you've now just done a reset. You have completely nullified all of that. Additionally, your opponent now, during their next turn, must skip their skill action within their set of 3. Your final skill ability is within your character's unique skill. Depending on how the wording is on your card, you will set your bead on them or do it however they say fit. But your last option, again, is using your opponent's skill. Those are your 3 different actions, how you perform them, what you're doing. So now you're wondering, how do I actually win the game? There are 2 different ways to win. Your first is by getting to 10 points. The next is by completing 5 diagrams. You will win the game by doing either. You don't have to do both. It's an either or kind of a thing. So again, you're going to want to set up how you play. Again, you can say, hey, I want to go for 2 of these high difficulty to get me 5 points. So I win, or I might want to go the easier route and try to get 5 diagrams of where I only need like the one easier thing. So that is how you win, by earning 10 points or completing 5 diagrams. That is TripLock in a nutshell. It is a great game. Very difficult, mind-bending game. Very difficult to try to remember what order things are in, especially as things are moving around, being flipped. But once you've gotten a couple games under your belt, you've really learned how it's done. It is a lot of fun. A lot of frustrating fun. Hope you've enjoyed. Hope you've learned how to play and seen how the setup is done. Grab your own copy and get going. Hope you enjoyed.